Hello, and welcome to the Live Blissed Out podcast, helping demystify decision making so you can get unstuck and take action. I'm your host, Marissa Houston, bringing you another blissful episode. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Now let's get started with a listener spotlight question. Debbie in Denver wants to know how to pick a fresh Christmas tree that won't die in a week in the Colorado dry air. Thanks for your question, Debbie. This episode is going to cover this and so much more, so keep listening. Our topic for this episode is Christmas trees, and my guest is Levi Heidrich, owner of Colorado Tree Farm Nursery. He and his siblings are Colorado natives. They own and operate their family nursery in Colorado Springs and have been in business since 1977 and in Colorado since 1980. They specialize in hardy landscape trees, shrubs, and perennials that thrive in the trying Colorado climate. Starting Black Friday, they sell fresh-cut Christmas trees. Varieties include Fraser Fir, White Fir, Balsam Fir, Canaan Fir, Douglas Fir, White Pine, and Native Fir that he and his brother cut in Colorado. They also carry tree stands, removal bags, wreaths, garlands, and accessories. They pride themselves on having quality products, great service, and creating an environment for their team where they can thrive and grow. No pun intended. For more information, visit their website at coloradotreefarmnursery.com. Hi, Levi. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
I am really looking forward to talking to you today about Christmas trees because I know that it's a source of confusion for people who are just so excited about celebrating the Christmas season, and they know that they want to get a tree, but a lot of times they just don't know where to start. They don't know what to look for, what to consider, how to care for the tree. And so I'm really looking forward to learning from you and sharing your insights with our listeners. What is the benefit of having a live tree versus purchasing, for lack of a better word, fake tree?
Right, and we get that question a lot, and I think there's a lot of confusion out there about the two. First off, I'll say right off the bat, I don't know that there's such a thing as a bad Christmas tree. I think they're all good and serve the purpose very well. But there are some benefits to having a real Christmas tree. I think first, folks need to understand that Christmas trees are grown as a crop. They're like corn or carrots or anything that's grown like that. These Christmas tree farms aren't going out into the woods and just clear-cutting forests. When the farmer cuts down a crop or a tree, then they plant another one or more to replace that. So it's a renewable crop. It's something that is always planted and always growing. The trees themselves are extremely beneficial to our environment. As they grow, they clean the air as they remove carbon dioxide and turning it into oxygen. So that's really beneficial. The young trees are also more beneficial than older trees that are on their decline or on their way out. A young tree will produce more oxygen than an older tree. So having young, fast-growing trees in these areas where the Christmas tree farms are is better for our climate. The Christmas trees provide watersheds and habitats for wildlife. As far as the land use, a lot of the Christmas tree farms are grown on rolling hills or land that has little agricultural value. So they're using land that could not be used for other crops to produce food or things like that. Christmas trees are biodegradable 100%. So at the end of the season, when you get rid of your Christmas tree, there's many ways to do that. Most municipalities and communities will provide areas like tree cycles. I know down here in Colorado Springs, we have one that we promote on our Facebook page and to our customers where folks can drop off their Christmas trees at different locations on several different weekends after Christmas and New Year's. And those trees are then chipped and turned into mulch that folks then use for their landscaping. So it's going back into the soil to help rejuvenate the soil and add minerals and things and stuff like that back to our soil. The Boy Scouts in our community will pick up Christmas trees for small donations and take them to these places. Some places, I know where I grew up, they used them for habitat for fish. They would actually put the Christmas trees, of course, they've taken all the decorations and things off of them, but they would put the trees in lakes and use them for fish habitat. I read somewhere that they use them on beaches and areas for erosion control. So there's just a lot of things that are very beneficial about using something that's 100% biodegradable. From an economy standpoint, when you buy a real tree, you're supporting local economies where the trees are grown. So a lot of farm-grown trees come from areas like Oregon, Washington, New Hampshire, the Carolinas, Michigan, Minnesota, and we're supporting our USA economy. We're not supporting something that's shipped in out of our country. Artificial trees are often made from PVC and steel, and they're shipped in from areas like China. And when those trees have gone past their usable life, a lot of times they're then put in a landfill. Some of them can be recycled, but some materials can't. So recycling the real trees is, like I said, it's used for mulches, it's used for erosion control, it can be used in lakes. It's just really, really beneficial for folks.
Wow, that is a wonderful point there because, most of us don't consider that. We don't really think about it because, many people are concerned about what they think is killing a tree. And to your point, there's a lot of ways to recycle it and use it and bring it back. So it kind of has its life in the beginning and then there's a life to it in the end as well.
Correct. We do cut native trees. My dad and our family, and there's, I know collectors that we get permits or we go on private land and we cut trees out of the mountains. Where we go cut these trees, we're not clear cutting the forest. I mean, it's a lot of work and challenge to find trees that make good Christmas trees, but there's a lot more trees that are great forest trees growing up. And by thinning the forest a little bit, we're help prevent with fire. We're thinning the forest where they're not as susceptible to high fire dangers and things like that. I know one of the areas that we cut on since the early 80s burned in the spring. I can't remember the name of the fire, if it was the spring fire last summer down southwest of Levita. And, those areas were just so overgrown and things like that. There's some benefits for even the natural cutting. And then for the folks that buy the permits in Colorado that go cut their own with their families, they only allow certain sizes and certain varieties to be cut. So it is managed. They're trying to protect our forests as well. But oftentimes, even the native trees that are cut from the forest, it's such a small percentage of trees that are taken out for Christmas trees that it's actually doing, in my opinion, it's doing more good than bad.
So let's talk a little bit about where to purchase live trees, because I know that when you drive around the city, you will always see these plots of land where they have trees that you can just go in and pick your tree and then load it up.
Right.
And then, of course, there are farms that you can go to, which is what your family has. Where should people go to purchase a nice live tree?
Okay. I think, and again, we've been doing this long enough, I think I can give you some good information here. I think that your local nurseries and garden centers should probably be your first choice. I say that because, again, you're supporting people in your community. These garden centers and brick and mortar businesses have been there. They contribute back to the community, not only by providing jobs for people, but we donate to charities, to schools, fundraisers, things like that. So you're supporting your local businesses. Often those businesses are buying directly from farms. So in the Christmas tree chain, you have suppliers and farms that grow these trees that are located out of state. Colorado is such a dry climate that these types of Christmas trees that we'll talk about in a few minutes aren't grown in Colorado. So these trees are grown out of Oregon and Washington and places like that, and then they're shipped to Colorado, and then they're distributed. Nurseries and garden centers oftentimes deal directly with the growers. So we can get our trees in fresher, but we often can get a better product. We're not necessarily as worried about getting a cheap product, and the economies of scale is we want to sell a good product to our customers so that you're a customer for years. We want you to be happy with it and enjoy what we're providing. So I think supporting your local nurseries and garden centers is probably my first suggestion. Then you're going to have, we call them the street vendors, which is what you're talking about, where you see these Christmas tree lots start popping up in parking lots and street corners. And I think you got to be cautious there, the way they set up and the way the trees are displayed. And price-wise, when I've done my checking, we're usually very competitive with them. But I think we provide an experience for our customers. We have hot cocoa, we have Christmas music, we have a big fireplace going. We've got around 20 to 25 people working for us to help our customers explain the difference in the different trees and things like that. The street vendors, again, a lot of these people don't necessarily live in our community. Some do, but some come in from out of town, smaller areas. They're attracted to the big cities like Denver, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, where there's a higher concentration of people. And, they're trying to make a living. I understand that. But I think by supporting your local businesses, you're doing better for your local economy, and you're also probably going to get a better product. And then you have the box stores, your hardware stores, your grocery stores. Those are going to sell mass quantities. A lot of times those trees may be cut a lot earlier than trees going to an independent because they've got to go through the distribution process. They may have to go to a warehouse. They're not necessarily directly shipped from the farm to the store where they're going to be sold. Our trees are cut literally the week before they're shipped to us, so they're as fresh as you can possibly get. So I think that's a big thing. And then there's different grades of Christmas trees. There's premiums, there's ones, there are number twos, and those may be called different things depending on who you're dealing with. but premium in our case is the best tree. Then a number 1 is maybe a little skinnier, not as perfect. A number 2 maybe have a real flat side or something like that. So we're buying premium trees. We want each tree to be as perfect as possible. And they cost a little more to do that, but again, you get a better product for our customers.
Right. So it's basically knowing what options there are and understanding what you're purchasing.
Right. And the final option for you is to actually go cut your own. Now, you have to understand in Colorado, when you go into the forest to cut your own tree, you're not going to buy a beautiful, perfect farm-grown tree. If you lived in an area like Oregon, Washington, New Hampshire, the Carolinas, these Christmas tree farms, you can actually go buy and cut one on these farms. And a lot of people that have moved to Colorado from those areas are used to that, and they come here, and that's just not an option because those types of trees don't grow in our climate for one reason or another, whether it's because of how dry we are or our soil pH is wrong. I know like a Fraser Fir is one of our best-selling trees, and they have to grow in an acidic soil that we just don't have. So you can buy permits. You can go online and you can buy permits to go cut in designated areas on Forest Service land. But I think oftentimes, the trees aren't to the expectations. They're not as full as the term we often hear. And I will say, though, that of all of these options, like I said, there's no such thing as a bad Christmas tree. It's about a memory. It's about an experience. It's a tradition. And I think that if you're going out to cut your own tree because it's fun, then go for it. If you're going out to cut your own tree to try to save a buck, make sure you calculate in how long it takes to drive, how far you drive, the food you buy, because I think buying a tree locally is less expensive than cutting your own tree, but it's a lot of fun to go out in the woods and hunt for that perfect tree.
Yes, and I think also when we go and purchase a tree, it's confusing for most consumers because there are so many options and we're not really sure what type of tree we need for ourselves. So I know very little about trees. The ones I've heard of often are blue spruce and Douglas fir. Those are the only two types of trees that I'm even aware of. But when you go and look for a tree, you notice that they're different because their leaves are different. It's just the way they look is a little different. How do I know which one I'm supposed to get for me? So could you talk to us about that?
You bet. And I'm going to speak to mostly the varieties that we sell. There are a lot of different varieties available. Most are different types of fir. We like fir because they have that classical Christmas tree shape. They're pyramidal, right?
Yeah.
Very similar to what like a Colorado spruce would look like. The fir are nice because they have a soft needle. So they're not going to poke you when you go to hang ornaments or the kids are walking by the Christmas tree. If you do bump into it, it's not going to poke you. The most common tree, the most popular tree that we sell is called a Fraser Fir. They are known because they last well. They're a dark green top, and then on the underside of the needle, it's almost a silver blue. It's very pretty with lights on it. They also have a stiffer branch. Folks that have heavier ornaments, those old clay ornaments that your grandparents or your kids made that have been passed down from generation to generation, can take a little bit of weight. So if you want a farm-grown tree that's dense, and I'm going to use the term full again, that's the type that we sell. That probably makes up well over 60 to 70% of the trees that we sell are Fraser Fir. The next type of fir that we sell are the Balsam and the Canaan Fir, which are very, very similar. They're usually a little less expensive. They have a similar look to the Fraser Fir, but usually they dry out just a little bit faster, but they're also a little better price point. The branches aren't quite as sturdy, so they can still hold ornaments, but maybe not quite as many. They're a good price point. They're a good value. The cheapest fir that we sell, or our bargain fir, is the Douglas Fir. Douglas Fir is known because it usually has a little bit of a stronger aroma. It's less expensive, but they generally can dry out faster than some of the other types, and we've seen years where we have really hot, dry periods during the Christmas tree season where they're outside, or if we get really, really cold, sometimes Douglas fir are a little bit more sensitive to that. So it's a great tree. We see a lot of couples, young couples, new families, college students, people in apartments. We sell Douglas fir in the 5 to 7 foot range, so we don't sell them very big. They're a good entry-level tree price-wise, and we sell quite a few of them and have a pretty good success rate with them, and they're usually really not a problem. Then we get into a white pine, which is a long needle. It's, if you're familiar with the ponderosa that are grown natively in our state, these have that long needle, and they're really shaggy looking. I always call them woolly bully trees, but they're kind of shaggy. They don't hold a heavy ornament. They look good with a lot of lights and tinsel, but they're just a different look, and it's really pretty. It's kind of a mid-range price tree for like an 8 to 9 foot tree. They're usually the best value, and we don't sell a ton of them because they are unique, but it is kind of a different look. I stopped selling spruce years ago because they are so pokey. That needle is so stiff. We had 10 of them here, and I think I had sold all 10 of them 3 times. People kept returning them. And they weren't drying out, but they're so pokey that they weren't a very fun tree to have inside the home, that they would poke you. And then my favorite are the native trees. Some people will call them Charlie Brown trees because they're more open, they're more layered. But I always ask customers when they ask me, I said, have you seen Charlie Brown's Christmas? That tree is a branch. It's not even a tree. And, these are very unique. And these are the ones that my brother and myself cut for our customers on our own. We're actually getting ready to do that here pretty soon. And they are just gorgeous. I love them because you can hang a ton of ornaments on them. And they last forever. Since they were grown in our climate, in our dry climate, they don't have the number of needles or the number of branches. And they're oftentimes cut fresher, but the native trees that are cut will last longer. But sometimes they're just not the look that people want, We understand that, and a percentage of what we sell, they're definitely not close to the top. But for me, that's what we use every year, and I have just memories of cutting with my dad. And again, it's about a tradition. It's those memories that you're making. And again, I'll say it again, I don't think there's any such thing as a bad Christmas tree, but those are generally the types of the cut trees that we sell. And then we sell living trees, trees that you can buy and then plant in your yard afterwards. And those we sell pine and spruce and different types of trees that'll grow well in our climate, but that's another option as well.
So when we talk about height and weight of trees, height is pretty obvious. If you have a place where you're going to put your tree and it's 8 feet tall, then you definitely don't want your tree to be 12 feet tall. But in terms of weight, since a lot of people are going out and transporting these trees, they have to go wherever they're going to go to buy them and then make sure that they travel well so that they can bring them home. What's an average weight that they can expect from the tree? And I'm sure it varies by height, but generally speaking. And then what are some tools that they need to be ready for? Because I do see cars on the road and it looks scary because they don't really have anything holding on to the tree, or it's like they didn't even plan for it. They just went over there, grabbed the tree, put it on top and hope for the best.
Right.
So what are some best practices, I guess, that we could share so that people transport these safely?
I hear you. We see some pretty scary people pull out of here that won't let us tie them on their vehicles for them. First, I'll start out with the height and weight. So the most common size we sell is an 8 to 9 foot Fraser Fir. And that size, I actually spoke to my grower this morning to verify the weights. He thought they would weigh approximately 75 to 100 pounds a tree for an 8 to 9 foot tree. So then like a 5 to 6 foot tree might only weigh half of that, 40 to 60 pounds, somewhere in that range. If you want to go big, so like a 12-foot tree might weigh over 200 pounds. We bring in a couple 20-footers for a resort and then a church locally here, and those trees we have to use a tractor to handle. They're probably 500 or 600 pounds. So that gives you kind of an idea of the height and weight that you're dealing with. As far as preparedness, you can tie a Christmas tree onto about any type of vehicle, whether it has a rack on top, like if you've got an SUV or a van, those are the easiest to tie onto. But if you have a car, there's ways to do that. Depending on where you're going, if you're going to go cut your own tree, make sure you have some twine or rope with you so you can securely attach it to the vehicle. If you purchase a tree from us, we actually do that for you. That's part of the service we provide is while you're drinking hot cocoa and listening to music, we'll have the tree tied on your vehicle by the time you get back to it. We use a heavy baling twine that farmers use to bale straw bales or hay. But like a nylon rope, I don't like bungee cords because they have given them. I don't like ratchet straps. That's too complicated. You don't need to ratchet it down. You might break something. And the way you do that is if you're tying it on top of a vehicle, you always face the butt or the bottom of the tree forward. You never put the top of the tree forward. If you're going into your house and you're trying to pull a tree through a door, if you go bottom first, the branches fold up and it'll slip right through. Same with air. If you go top first, all the branches catch on the door, or if you drive with it top first, it'll catch all the air and act like a big sail. So you want to go butt first. On anything under 10 foot, we'll throw 2 pieces of twine over the top. We do one over the butt, and then we go and do one over the back. And you get the front one tight, and then you throw one about half to 2/3 of the way over the back. And as you bring it down, all those branches are laying flat. It's going to act like a spring, and it's going to put tension on both pieces of twine. And if those are tight, as long as you don't get a huge wind gust and you can tie your knot right and you use the right tensile strength of string, we've never lost one coming out of here, which we tie thousands of trees on vehicles every year, and we've been pretty lucky. If you have a pickup truck, just put them in the back, put the bottom facing forward again, don't put the top in first. And those you don't really have to even tie in. If it's a real small tree, you might, they might blow out, but like a 6 foot or bigger tree, you just put butt first facing the cab and you're good to go. If you're doing real big trees, 16 to 20 footers, we can tie those on vans and SUVs. Some people will bring in little utility trailers. And again, the main importance is butt first. Not a fan of putting blankets underneath them. That usually makes it slippery. That blanket kind of move around under the tree and cause them to slip a little bit more. If you get sap on your vehicle, there's a couple things. You can get like a fiber, or what am I trying to say, a soft towel, something that won't scratch your paint. WD-40 or lemon oil work really well to dissolving the sap, and you can just wipe it right off. I use a lot of lemon oil during the Christmas tree season, getting sap off my hands and my watch and my shirts and my sweatshirts and things like that. And then if you're just driving it around town, if you're within an hour or two from your home, there's no need to try to protect it, to put it inside. I think I would be careful, if you're driving on the highway and they've recently put mag chloride down, you don't want it to really splash up on there. But other than that, you really won't hurt it transporting it on top of a vehicle or in a trailer or in the back of a pickup.
And do you recommend as well perhaps a pair of gloves? I always see people without any gloves or any protection, and sometimes those trees can be, like you said, pokey or difficult to maneuver. So does it help to have some gloves too?
If you're cutting your own, definitely, I would wear gloves to do that, but you can handle it safely without them. I mean, we wear just a work glove, like a mechanic's glove or a leather work glove, and when we're handling hundreds of trees a day, you wear out your hands doing that. So, we wear gloves in the nursery handling them, but if you buy one from us, you're not going to have to touch the tree till you get home, so you just don't have to worry about it, other than keep warm. We sell trees in single-digit temperatures, so it's make sure you prepare, watch the weather before you come out and buy one. I've seen people show up in shorts when it's snowing out, so I always am curious to what the thought process is there.
Yeah, that's true. Bundle up, because you never know. And we are in Colorado, and the weather changes really quickly, so
you bet.
Be prepared.
You bet.
Okay, so this is the age-old question that I know I hear a lot. When is the best time to buy a live tree?
Right. And as soon as Halloween is over, our phone starts ringing. We get more calls. I think people would buy trees before Halloween in some cases. I won't bring them in that early because they do have a shelf life. So that target date, again, we say is Black Friday. We do sell a few trees a couple days before Thanksgiving if we're ready. As far as selection is concerned, I think getting them sooner is better. We will sell out of Christmas trees in about 10 days. So this year, that means by December 8th, we're going to be close to being sold out of Christmas trees. And if you wait, you're going to have trees that have been sitting outside, maybe not getting watered, out in the sun longer. If you buy one earlier in the season, whether or not you want to put it up, then you can take it home and put it in your garage, a cool shaded area, and give it water to where it doesn't dry out as fast. That reminded me when you were talking about where to buy a tree, buying from a nursery or a garden center, a lot of times we have water on site, so we can keep these trees watered during the season. Whereas if you buy like on a street corner, they're not. They don't have water on those places. So that's one thing to remember. But I think the best time to buy is sooner in the season, because the longer you wait, the bigger the chances of people being sold out, especially if you want a big tree. There's a lot fewer big trees available right now due to farm market conditions, things like that. And the big trees sell out fast. We sell out of big trees pretty quickly, and we always have people looking for them, and we just can't get more. There's also a notion that people say, well, they get fresh shipments in. That's not the case. We order all our trees, they come in at one time, and when they're gone, they're gone. Some of the fly-by-night, the street corner guys will say we get fresh shipments in all the time, and what they're doing is they're driving to a re-wholesaler, which I don't believe there is one in Colorado anymore, and they'll pick up 50 or 100, whatever they need to get through the week. But these trees have still been cut the same amount of time. Whereas if you're getting them from a local source, a garden center or a nursery, they've probably been taking care of them. They've kept them in water. They protected them from the elements, things like that. So the best time to buy, I think, is earlier. Weekends are usually absolutely insane. Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday is going to be your busiest times. If you want to have a little bit less traffic and deal with fewer folks, the weekdays are a good time to buy. It's not as crazy. I know for us, our weekday afternoons, evenings, we stay open later during Christmas trees, and we have lights and everything, so it provides a nice experience. But there's not quite the crowds that you have to deal with.
And what's the latest time you're open in your farm?
Monday through Thursday, we're open till 7, and then Friday and Saturday, we're actually open till 8. And then Sundays, we close at 5. But we stay open late. We put in special light poles and things like that to light the trees at night. So we're open late, and I think a lot of places are during that Christmas tree season.
I love what you're saying here, because getting the first pick and planning ahead is really important. But I do think that a lot of consumers are likely waiting because they're worried about the trees drying out. So when you say water your Christmas tree, what are some practices? Because again, I don't have a green thumb. I just have one plant in my house that tells me when it needs water because it starts to droop. And then I just go up to it and give it water, and all of a sudden he perks up again. But a lot of plants don't do that. So how do we know how much water to give it so that it has enough and it's happy, but we're not overdoing it?
First off, if you buy it early and you're not going to put it up right away, which is actually a good idea, and you like store it in the garage in a shaded, cooler environment, either get your tree stand set up or get a bucket of water to where you can stick the butt of the tree in the water. The tree, when it absorbs water, it sucks it up through its cambium layer, the outer layers of the bark, and that's how it transports water to its needles. So that's where you want to supply the water. In the nursery, we mist them. We mist the needles because the trees are outside. We can't put water on their butts, on their stems. The water freezes and you have ice, and this doesn't work very well. So we actually mist them and soak them with hoses on the top, and then the trees that are on our piles ready to be sold, we can spray water on their butts as well. But after you've purchased your tree, you want to make sure you get a fresh cut. That's probably the most important thing you can do, is cut an inch or inch and a half off the bottom of the tree. What that does is opens up the pores on that trunk that allow it to absorb water. If you don't do that, it can be very difficult for that tree to absorb water. And then you're going to take the tree home and you're going to place the tree in your tree stand or in a bucket, and you're going to use tap water. I prefer to use warm water, and the reason being that if you imagine cold syrup versus hot syrup, and that's the sap, right? What flows better, cold or warm syrup? It's warm syrup. So I use warm to hot tap water, not boiling, but just warm when I fill my tree stand up. Each tree is going to be different as to how much water it takes. Some trees will drink water for 4 weeks. You'll have to fill it up every day. And you need to keep an eye on that tree stand. If the water level in the tree stand drops below the bottom of the tree, that bottom can seal up again and not absorb water. So you just want to make sure you keep it watered. Don't let it seal up. Also, don't freak out too much if you get a tree that doesn't drink a lot of water. I've had trees in my home that have drank a ton of water and seemed like they dried out a little bit faster. And then I had a tree that I put up and it drank water one day and stopped, and it was fine. So I don't know that there's a correlation between the two. Common sense would say that the more it drinks, the better, but I have not necessarily seen that in my experience. So remember, warm to hot tap water, not boiling, but that'll help. And the water will cool off, but it seems like that maybe keeps the sap maybe a little warmer. It flows a little bit better. You want to get it in water before that butt seals up. So you usually have from the time you leave, like if you have it cut at the place you buy it, you've got a couple hours. If it's going to be longer than that, then you need to make another fresh cut when you get it home. We use bow saws or electric chainsaw or a chainsaw or some type of saw that's designed to cut wood, okay? I recommend a larger stand that holds more water. We sell a brand called Cinco. They're a heavy plastic. We sell them up to trees that'll hold up to 12 to 14 foot, and there's different sizes, but they hold a lot of water, so you don't have to fill it as often. It's easier to fill water on these stands. The way their arms go up into the tree on the bottom, it allows you to get a water tube in there. You want to keep your tree away from heat sources. So these trees are grown in climates in the ground that usually have a lot more humidity than us, and they're outside in cooler weather for the most part. And then you take it into your house, which is probably drier than the Sahara Desert, right?
Yeah.
You know how much lotion and how your skin dries out in the winter. The winter can be some of our driest seasons, so you want to avoid heat sources. What are heat sources? Well, they're vents from your heater. They could be stoves, and everybody wants to shove that Christmas tree in the front window so everybody can see it. Well, that window is a heat source, right? It's taking sunlight and magnifying it. So you got to be careful. I know we all want to display that tree, but those windows, especially if they're south or west facing, can generate a lot of heat. And when you take a tree in, again, from an outdoor climate, it's grown in the fields, in the ground, and you shove it in a dry house, the longer it's inside, the quicker it's going to dry out. So that's why I recommended, maybe you don't put it up right away. You might go out and buy it, get the perfect tree, and then take it home and leave it in the garage for a week or two until you're ready for it. That said, probably 99% of the trees we sell are put up the day they're bought. And those trees, most of them make it just fine. But you just got to be aware of, like if you have a gas fireplace or a stove or there heat vents, what is heating your home? Where does the heat come from? Does it get direct sunlight through a window? Those are things that will all dry your tree out faster than normal. And then again, I want to remind you, just don't let that water level drop in the tree itself. I think that's probably the biggest factor if somebody forgets to water it. There are tree preservatives that you mix and put in the water as you fill the water. We sell one that we buy from one of our vendors, and these preservatives are just a scientific formulated chemical, and some of the benefits of this preservative is it helps delay evaporation in the tree. It softens the sap and the wood fibers to promote liquid absorption, so that's kind of similar to using the warm water where we're trying to keep it more liquid so it can absorb to the tree. It also provides nutrients and minerals. I think you want to avoid things like sugar, soda, anything that you put in that water that might clog the pores on that tree. You want it to take as much water up as it can for as long as it can. So don't put anything in that stand that might syrup, stuff like that, stuff that might clog it up. We hear some really interesting stories from customers, and I think the main thing is water itself, and then these preservatives are inexpensive, and you every time you fill up the water, especially with farm-grown trees grown outside of Colorado, I think it's a good idea to use this preservative.
So speaking speaking of that, then, I know that every year we hear some horror stories about people who had their trees cause a fire because of the way that they put the lights on there. What are some things we can do to be very cautious about how we take care of the tree? Do we turn off the lights before we go to bed, or do we just leave them on all the time? I mean, are there any best practices to keep it as safe as possible?
Right, and I think it's gotten better as technology has gotten better. We see a lot of LED lights now, and if you go touch an LED light that's been on for a long period of time, they don't get hot. The old incandescent lights and then like the bubble lights, those could get warm. In my opinion, I've never seen one just burst in fire without a flame source. So folks used to decorate with candles. They would put lit candles in their Christmas tree, and I don't think that's a good idea at all. That's an open fire source. If you've got a wood burning stove or something that develops a spark or could develop an ash or an ember that could get in the tree, that would be a concern. I suppose if the light shorted out and caused a spark, I'm thinking of the movie Christmas Vacation.
Yes.
When the guy smoking the cigar, the cat bites the wire and it shorts out.
Yes.
But I think common sense, candles, open fireplaces, wood burning stoves, pellet stoves, something that may produce a spark or an ember, you got to be cautious there. If the tree is bone dry, I mean, if you get a tree that dries out where the needles are actually crispy, they feel dry, that's something I think you got to be a little bit more concerned with. Again, though, they won't just combust. They've got to have a spark or a source of flame to start a fire. And if you've switched over to LED lights, which I don't know why people wouldn't, they've gotten a lot less expensive. They save a ton of money. They last forever. Their colors are more vibrant. I think LED lights are the way to go, and that's what I would suggest because they don't get hot. And then you couldn't pay me to put a candle in my Christmas tree.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Common sense says don't put a open flame in a piece of wood in your house.
And the fact that we have technology now like LED lights is wonderful because obviously when I was growing up, we didn't have that option. And so there was a little more to consider. Now, if they're using more of the traditional light still, do you think that it's safer to just turn it off when you go to bed?
Just to save energy, to conserve energy, I would suggest, I know I turn mine off at night. We have it on when we're home. I actually went out years ago and bought these little remotes that plug in, and we keep the remote on the counter so you don't have to crawl in or and plug it in where you can hit the button and turn them on. But we turn ours off at night. I think the only night that they stay on overnight is Christmas Eve, just a tradition for our family.
And I think now they have timers, don't they?
Right. I mean, you can actually, I was looking online, you can buy Wi-Fi plugs that you can actually turn lights off and on. You can turn them off from your phone from a remote location. But yeah, you can do timers where they're on for so many hours or they're dusk till dawn, stuff like that. But I think just to conserve electricity, I think if you're not looking at it, it's not a bad idea to turn it off. And it may be safer if it gets hot. Like I said, some of these new lights just don't get that warm to the touch.
No, I think that's fantastic. We have a lot of technology now to help us make that process a lot easier. You briefly talked about how to dispose of trees. At what point do we do it? Do we do it right after the New Year's? Like, is that the sign that, hey, it's time to start thinking about where I dispose my trees? And where do people normally find locations where they live to know where to send them to? Do they just Google online and just say how to dispose of my live trees to find information?
You could definitely start there. I know I checked a few years ago, and the places that did this hadn't updated the information. So with our nursery, we actually got these postcards yesterday that we will hand out, and I'll post it on our website and our Facebook page, and it's called Tree Cycle, and it's like the headline is Recycle Your Tree and Support Your Community. Keep the tree out of the landfill and pick up the free mulch. So you're getting mulch, and they ask for like a $5 suggested donation with 100% of donations that go back to support your community youth program. So this, again, when we're talking about supporting economies, that's a great benefit. Down here in Colorado Springs, they have 6 locations, plus there's a place called Rocky Top Resources down here. Then they have, it looks like 2 weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, where it's open from like 9 to 4, where you can drop your tree off. It needs to be cleared from, take all the decorations, tinsel lights, things like that off of them. And then they're going to mulch them. And then you can then, in turn, get that mulch to use for landscaping. And then the money that was spent from the donation then goes towards these youth programs. I know the Boy Scouts down here in Colorado Springs had programs where they would have drop-off locations, or sometimes they would even come door-to-door to pick up Christmas trees. I knew at one point there were a couple landscape companies or people that had a service where they would come pick up your Christmas tree for you and help dispose of it. And they charge a small fee to do this. If you're going to get rid of it yourself, though, I would hop online. Again, if you're down in the Colorado Springs area, you can check on this website, and this is called treecyclecos.org, or you can go to elpasoco.com for information in the Colorado Springs Monument and El Paso County areas, but I'm positive they have these same programs in most municipalities. The small town I grew up in, southwest of Pueblo, you would take them over by the lake, and they would actually use them for fish habitat in the lakes. So I would check with probably your local garden centers or your nurseries will have this information. That's another benefit from buying local. They'll have that information.
So it sounds like there are a lot of options. Just look at the one that is available in your community and just plan ahead. Just look it up so that when it's time to dispose of the tree, you know exactly what to do. And in terms of timeline, do you have an ideal timeline that most people like to adhere to?
I think that as far as the safety, you got to pay attention to the tree. Like if you bought a native tree, those will last months. My dad left his Christmas tree up till mid-February one year. The tree was not growing roots, and it won't grow roots, but the new growth popped open because it had been so warm for so long. But I think most folks are going to take their trees down, the last weekend of December, first weekend of January. Like this program that we have down here, they're going to be this year open December 28th and 29th and January 4th and 5th at the different locations. If you don't get to them there, the company, that business, Rocky Top Resources, is actually a full-time business Monday through Saturday. They're closed on Sundays during that time of year where you can take it to get mulch. But like most of your landscape supply places that sell or make mulch probably have programs where they would take them anytime. Probably cost a little bit. Again, I know Rocky Top is part of this donation program. So there's places like that around. I'm sure your local nurseries or garden centers, if they sell Christmas trees, are going to have that information for you.
So Levi, how do we remind the listeners about where to access the information on your website and how to get a hold of you?
Our phone number is 719-598-TREE or 8733. You can call us anytime if you have questions. Our website it's a long one, but it's www.coloradotreefarmnursery.com, and that's all spelled out, not abbreviated. If you Google Colorado Tree Farm, we pop up pretty quick. If you go up to the top of our website on the drop-down menu, there's a Christmas tree page that has information about the varieties. You can actually go on our plant finder on our website and search Christmas trees, and it'll give you brief descriptions about the varieties that we sell and what their benefits are. I should have my prices updated here by the week of Thanksgiving. We're waiting to get our freight quotes, but to get the pricing up. But our website has a ton of information. It'll have updates as to when we're going to open, what hours we're going to have prior to Thanksgiving, and then once we get into our big season, Black Friday and on, when we sell out, we'll post it on there too. So if people are still looking, they don't drive all the way to us and find out we're sold out of trees already. Our Facebook page, there's links on our website to that. If you go to Facebook and look for Colorado Tree Farm Nursery, we'll pop up, and we update fun information. We'll have tips on how to care from them. We'd sometimes do competitions with our customers, show us your picture and win prizes. We'll have the information on the tree cycle program and stuff like that. So our website and Facebook page are a great way to do that as well.
That sounds like so much fun, Levi. You are such a wealth of knowledge, and I tell you, this has been helpful for me, and I am so confident that anybody listening to us is going to learn more than they ever have about what to do with a tree, how to care for their tree, how to buy the right tree, and that's really the whole point. As you mentioned, it's a Christmas tradition. We want to have great memories. We want to enjoy the process and the season and know how to make the best choices for ourselves and our families. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking your valuable time. I know this is a busy time of year for you, and I really appreciate you carving out a little bit of that time to spend with us and share all your knowledge.
Oh, we're happy to do it, and we would love to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's as well.
Thank you, Levi. That's all for this episode of Live Blissed Out. Thanks for listening, and thank you to Levi Heidrich for joining me today and for sharing tips on Christmas trees. Join us again next week for another informative and motivational show. Please visit liveblисsedout.com for access to all our podcasts and resources, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you find value in our show, please leave an honest rating either on the website or on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you haven't done so yet, join our Facebook community at facebook.com/groups/LBO podcast. It's a great place to engage. So long for now, and remember to keep moving forward.